Yes, you can start.
Okay, okay. Okay, sir. So, dear learners, good evening. So, we are going to learn on block 3, that is understanding the various communities of diaspora, starting from Jews, uh, African diaspora, and Asian diaspora. So, as we have gone through the various classes, we have understood the term diaspora itself has emerged from Jews community because they are the initial people who were scattered at an initial level, right? So uh, the the term diaspora also it's derived from their language, and it is considered as a uh, scattered. When the people are scattered, it means diaspora. So, so that we need to root ourselves or to have deep understanding on how the Jews community has emerged as a diaspora community, right? So we learn about in this uh, the, subject on understand the history and characteristics of Jews diaspora, and we also learn the difference phases or the different stages where the Jewish diaspora and the growth of anti-Semitism and Zionism, and understand also in the context of Jewish migration to different parts of the geographical locations. And we will be familiarized with the conditions under which Israel, the Jews' homeland, was created and pattern of global distribution of the Jewish diaspora. So today we have the news that Britain is going to is announced that we are going to declare Palestine as a different country, right? So there is a lot of oppositions from Israel and the US stating that they will take initial steps to curb that Britain's move towards announcing the Palestine is a different country. So when we are learning diaspora, we need to also to understand how the scenario is going between the war between Israel and Palestine, as well as what is the other nations, so-called developed countries, are taking steps on that. So that's fine, and so let us move into the subject, that is Jews diaspora. So when we want to understand the Jews diaspora, uh, it is well I had discussed that migration and diaspora are the age-old phenomena when we talk about the Jews community, right? These are the earliest examples because they were forced by various rulers to move from their country so that they have the age-old phenomena with national identity and citizenship and political influence are the main core areas when the Jews are scattered. So that is the intertwined. So when they are scattered to other countries, like, so what type of national identity they have, or they claim themselves, or they the origin of that country, or they distinct themselves from there, right? So if they move from that country to another kind of other countries like Europe, Rome, and all those things, they didn't call themselves of the citizens of the country. They were of Jews. So when someone is considered to be a Jew, the person should be born for the Jew's mother. Otherwise, they are not considered as a Jews. So, intercaste marriage or it's highly prohibited in their uh, culture or the religion. And for them, the religious belief is that Jews are the very unique community and all those things, kind of a little bit of the religious perspective. So apart from that, the Jews diaspora serves as a classic case study often cited in the archetypal diaspora due to its extensive history and global presence. So very important for us to understand how this Jews community has uh, has emerged, right? So they have a three distinctive phases when you understand of the history of Jews diaspora. The first one is a biblical or at the ancient or the medieval ancient period, right? So before Christ, right? So this is a biblical or the ancient period, and the medieval period and the modern period, right? These are the three levels we need to look into the Jews community. So when we look into that perspective of the phases of Jews diaspora, the origin of Judaism and its divergence from Christianity. So the friction over religious beliefs and control of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is the place where uh, three major religion is involved in it, right? Jerusalem. So that in the previous class also we have discussed on the place called Jerusalem. This is the place for three major religions. One is for Jews, another one is for Christians, and another is for Muslims. Right? So they all believe that Jerusalem is for them. Right? So for Jews, the Moses is the prophet. All right, and for Christian, Jesus is the Son of God, and for Muslims is Muhammad Nabi is a prophet, last prophet from God. So these three are highly believe in that the Jerusalem is for them. So they continuously fight to conquer that place and fight against them and spread their religion and all those things. So that is the biblical the origin of Judaism. That is Jews, and it is diverse from Christianity. So they don't believe or they don't accept the religion of Christianity, right? So the friction over religious beliefs and control of Jerusalem is the main reasons that is happening in the biblical phase. So next, when we look into the medieval phase, the transition marked by the fall of the Roman Empire and the rise of the Ottoman Empire, right? So the Roman Empire, the Rome, the country is full of Christianity. The Roman Empire has fallen due to a lot of war and everything, and the rise of the Ottoman Empire, the religious becomes the central of politics, right? Exemplified by the Crusaders and forced conversions. So in the medieval period, there are a lot of forced conversions towards Christianity. A lot were killed, forced, and all those things had happened. So there is a lot of transition is happening, and the conversion is happening in the medieval period, especially in the when the Christianity has been headed and they started doing conversion and all those things. And the modern phase, anti-Semitism peaks in 19th, 20th centuries, leading to significant events like Holocaust and the establishment of Israel in 1948 reshapes the narrative of Jews' identity. So today, what we call Israel is being identified in 1948. So we know that there are a lot of mass killing of Jews by Hitler. So Adolf Hitler was very obsessed with the Jews community, and he was continuously uh, very aggressive towards them, and he killed them. So there was a history that says when police wanted to take a leave, if the police person under his Hitler's rule, if he kills two Jews or Jews, and if he goes reports to the higher authority, I killed a Jewish person, then he can be given a leave, right? So that was the situations when people uh, when during the Hitler's regime, right? So that were in the modern phase, or that is in the 19th century. And post-globalization migration with Jews youth moving for professional opportunities, right? So they moved several countries for professional opportunities, and they are in uh, in a good positions. And the history says that they are highly knowledgeable, and the history witness that the scientists are more from the Jewish community. The reason behind is they are well educated in the initial period itself, and those are the reasons we need to understand the background of the Jewish diaspora. Uh, uh, in a historical background, we need to know, and themes in Jewish diaspora, right? Uh, First one is a persistent migration due to statelessness and persecution. So, as I have said, Hitler was persecuting the Jewish community, and the next, the statelessness. The statelessness means they don't have the country, they don't have the land to live, they don't have the land to say, "This is my land," right? If what happens if a person does not have a home, so he will go for rent. If no one is giving rent, he will go and search for place to live. And they okay. So due to statelessness and persecutions are the main reasons why this community people are moving place to place to get settled. That is the main reason. And regarded as a victim of diaspora because of historical injustice like discrimination and displacement, right? Since because they are Jews, no other reasons. Because they are Jews, they were the victim of diaspora, right? So they don't give place for them to live, and there is a war to conquer Jerusalem, and they are in small in numbers. They are not able to fight against the people. They don't have the support, and due to the evolving of Christianity, and the war has taken place, and a lot were supported by the Christian missionaries to conquer the land, and these are the reasons why they were displaced, and injustice has happened, and the discrimination is mainly because they are all Jews, right? So the themes of exile and alienation are prevalent, but so are resilience and adaptability. And Jews' enterprise and entrepreneurship have significantly shaped their role in global history. So, on the other hand, Jews are very clever in establishing in their host land, right? Wherever they go, they try to more have good connection with the host countries rulers, and they are become the advisors, and they try to uh, be in the good book of the rulers of that country, and they start entrepreneurship, a business there, and they have a growth, right? So this is what in the initial period, and wherever they go, they live as a group. They will build their identity. They believe on their Jewish community is very high. They don't give up, right? And many converted to other religions, but few are very they stood on their religion, and they didn't give up their religion, as well as they have the solidarity and resilience and adaptability to new things, as well as uh, in involving in the religious perspectives, as well as involving in the lawmaking and policies. So when you look into Jews as a prototypic diaspora, when when we look into Jews as a prototypic diaspora, the historical origin says the first reference to Jews dispersion in the Bible. So we know that the Jews communities were taken from country to another country through Moses, right? So the Bible says that they were all kept as a slaves, and God wants to rescue them from the slavery, and they were all taken and led by Prophet Moses to Canaan, and to cross the river, and the God supported through Moses to bifurcate the river, and they walked on the river and moved to the country. So this was the biblical verses that says about the historical origins of the Jewish community. And there is a Greek influence. The term diaspora originates from the Greek translation to Jewish text, right? And the cultural terms Hebrew words like gola, that is punishment. Hebrew is the a language which was spoken by the Jewish community, and in the Christianity, Jesus is does belong to Jewish community, and he also spoke Hebrew, right? And glad exile encapsulate their experiences of displacement. So cultural terms also describes on how the Hebrew words like gola, that is punishment, and glad exile, encapsulate their experience of displacement. So the history is very strong that how this Jews community has originated and all those things. So the first Jews dispersal, that is 586 BC, right? The Babylonian Empire invades Jerusalem and destroyed Solomon's temple. That was the initial. Solomon's temple is a temple of the prophet, right? Solomon is the biblical terms. It says it, wisdom of Solomon. So he has a wisdom, and he has built the Jerusalem temple, the temple for God, the temple of God of called Moses. So the Babylonian Empire invades Jerusalem and destroyed Solomon's temple. The temple is destroyed. Even today, it's destroyed, right? So, King Nebuchadnezzar enforces exile, targeting leaders and officials of the Jews. So that made them the alienation from their homeland defines this space. So they are moved from their. The next is that the marks the beginning of the Jews diaspora, forcing the community to adapt their rebuilt in Babylon, right? Yes, please. So this marks the beginning of the Jews diaspora, forcing the community to adapt and rebuild Babylon. So that is the conditions of the Jews community in the beginning, right? So they were forced to move because the Babylonian Empire invades Jerusalem, destroyed Solomon's temple. This is the beginning why they all were scattered. Now today, the Solomon's temple is the place where these three religion wants to conquer it. And the Babylonian exile, a creative phase, right? Despite exile, Jews adapt, thrive under Babylonian rule, right? And they adopt local customs, names, and Aramaic as their lingua franca, right? So what happens since they were scattered from their place to another place? It is obvious that they tend to adapt the local customs, right? They're supposed to, and they need to change their names and all those things, and they were forced to learn the new language, the Babylonian language. And this period speaks intellectual and religious advancements. And leaders like Jeremiah, Ezekiel shaped Jews' religious identity, right? So the Bible clearly indicates this type of terms. Torah is their uh, Torah is their Jews' holy book, as like for Christians is the Bible, or Bhagavad Gita for Hindus, and Quran for Muslim. And these are the this is the book where they will do write to highlight their contribution and return to Judah and Persian influence again. And King Cyrus of Persia allows Jews to return to Judah, promoting restoration efforts. Right. So Persia allows the Jews to return to Judah. Right. And the Jews temple is rebuilt in 515 BCE, which was demolished in 560 BCE, a significant movement in Jews' history. And Ezra codifies the Torah. Torah is the holy book of the Jews, reinforcing Jews' laws across dispersed community. So Ezra codifies the Torah book, the religious book of the Jews, and reinforcing Jews' laws across the dispersed communities. To come back, okay. So periodical religious practices emerge, influencing future Jewish traditions. So now again they are rebuilding in 515 BCE to rebuild the Jews community again, right? So this is the conditions of the Jews community. So they are again coming to Judea to rebuild their uh, culture. And further disposal and hallucination. What happens? The Alexander the Great's conquests introduced Hellenistic culture to Judea. So they are building their own culture. And the Greek translation of the Torah bridges the cultures but also causes friction. So there is a Greek translation of the Torah. So normally they don't, because it is in Hebrew, they don't allow to translate it. Okay. So this Alexander has the translating the scripture, and Roman rule triggers a Jews revolt and destruction of the second temple. Right? So again, there is a fight between the Roman rule and Jews. That is again in 70, they are distracting the again the build the Solomon's temple again, which was built on second time. In the previous slide we have seen. So uh, and the Jews temple is rebuilt in 550 BC, and it was again demolished in 17 CE. The banishment from Jerusalem leads to further global dispersal, right? So Jews communities in diaspora. So Babylon, a hub of Jews intellectuals like post-exile, and Damascus and Asia Minor. So flourishing communities contribute to Jewish scholarship and trade. So they were moved to Damascus and Asia Minor and Sasanian Persia, melting pot of cultural exchange where Jews thrive. So Egypt under the Ptolemaic dynasty, Jews attain influential position. So Egypt, they were able to influence the government, right? So these are the various places: Babylon, Damascus, Sasanian Persia, and Egypt were the major places where these people are scattered due to the war and between the Roman and the Babylonian where they live, right? So the thing is, the reason behind why they are not uh, they gone through this type of issues is that uh, the main thing is they are not they don't let them to surrender for the war or anything, right? They want to keep their distinctive religion and culture, and they don't want to give up, so that they were fighting against the emperors, Roman emperors and other emperors, to keep their religions as a unique one. And when we see the 4th BC, that is 4 years before the birth of Jesus, the majority of Jews lived outside Israel, signifying a global diaspora, right? So the concept of diaspora becomes integral to Jews and cultural identity to and folklore. Even today, Jews diaspora remains a testament of to resilience, adaptability, and deeply rooted sense of community. So So we understand that the Jews communities will be, they used to be one, right? Because when we, in a theological way, if you look into, uh, when we are not united much, when we are far away, our love and kind of connection is too high, right? Imagine they were gone through this 4 BCE and all. They were scattered. There is no connection like what we have today, WhatsApp and phone calls and everything. They may not be connected. They will be in different countries. They long to be to see their own people. So when they got a country called Israel in 1948, so it is obvious that they will be more enjoying because they got the land that is for Jews, right? So the fight is going between the Palestinian Jews of because they want to for Israel, it's Palestine is part of their country, but Palestine is the people who are following the other religions called Islam, and the fight is going between. So it's a pure of a religious war, as well as there is a kind of Israel claims that there is a terrorism. So the understanding of the Israel community is very, very important because they have gone through a lot of uh, pain and force in the beginning. Now they got the land called Israel in 1948. Now they are struggling to rebuild again. And now we, as a students, we need to watch and make a kind of as a, when we are studying MA in diaspora community, what we need to understand in that perspective how this Chrome is looking into the war between the countries and what is happening and what need to be done. We need to evolve, and as a student of diaspora, we need to evaluate and come to a kind of internal judgment on what is happening there. Right? So the black diaspora, that is the another thing. When we look into the black diaspora, uh, when you say the this black diaspora, we know that they have gone lot of the uh, kind of uh, what to say slavery system, right? So Africans are the uh, slave in terms of trade, right? Uh, they were taken into taken light when they were taking them for jobs and everything. They are unpaid sometimes, and they were considered as a second or third citizens, or not even considered as a citizens. These are the what the history of when we look into the African people. So here we the objectives of this particular uh, black diaspora is understand the definition and concept of uh, black diaspora and comprehend the transatlantic and Indian Ocean slave trade in the context of origin of black diaspora, and how appreciate the pan Africa movement and diaspora linkages, what is now we are those people are enjoying. So so the black diaspora refers to the spread and migration of the African people across the globe over centuries. So includes both voluntary and forced migration. So here, when we look into the in 19th, 18th centuries, there are a lot of forced migrations. The first African diaspora is early human migration, that is almost lakhs years ago, and we have a Bantu migration spread of Bantu speaking peoples, that is 3000 BC, that is before Jesus Christ, and trading diaspora movement through Africa, Europe, Asia, and BC onwards, that is 5th century. Atlantic slave trade, forced migration to Americas, that is happening from 16th to 19th centuries, and modern diaspora migration for work, education opportunities, that is 19th century onwards. So it is we need to understand from the ancient period, the first African diaspora, this history records that it happened lakhs years ago, right? So very, very historical evidence is there to say that black diaspora has been emerged. And African diaspora studied through historical, social, and psychological lenses. Any diaspora, whether it is Jews or Indian diaspora or anything, we need to look into the historical, social, and psychological lenses, how they have gone through pain and behavioral changes, adaptation. All we need to look into the sociological lenses. And when you look into the social lenses, we need to look into the social life, society, the interaction between them, the segregation, segment of the population, and all those things we need to look into. So there are various authors uh, defines this black diaspora. There is a movement of Africans leading to shared cultural identity, right? When you say shared cultural identity, they need to adopt it and they need to adjust with that and all those things. So in July 1996, focuses on forced migration via trans-Saharan and transatlantic and Indian Ocean slave trades. How they are transnational to these various uh, geographical locations, and describes the diaspora as a dynamic process shaping the identity and culture by Zeleza in 2010. And we have it is defined as Palmer, who defines in 2000 as a global community with a shared history and resistance to racial oppression, right? And African Union recognized the diaspora as Africa's sixth region, emphasizing its role in African development. So it's the sixth region. So probably they have five regions. They consider diaspora communities the sixth region because their role is very high in developing the African countries. So this is what the various definitions that when we look into the African black diaspora and definitions, right? What is Atlantic slave trade? So the major phase of African migration is from the 15th to 19th centuries, right? So organized via triangular trade. So goods from Europe exchanged for African slaves, right? So there is a barter system where goods from Europe exchanged for African slaves. Imagine you take oil and you give 10 African slaves, 100 African slaves, so that uh, the goods are exchanged for human being. So slaves transported to Americas. That is the Middle Passage, right? So here commodities like sugar, tobacco shipped back to Europe, right? For giving the African people. And the Middle Passage is characterized by brutal conditions, overcrowding, and high mortality. Right, people died. Right, brutal conditions. There is no proper the kind of food, or restrooms, or clothing, or ventilation, or the accommodation. It's middle passage. When you say middle passage, it's characterized by brutal conditions and overcrowding. Right. So there is a high level of mortality. That means death. So survivors shaped African American cultures and identities in the Americas. Right. So very important aspect when you look into the Atlantic slave trade. So they termed as a slave trade. So they do trade in order to get a slave. Okay, I give these commodities like sugar and tobacco, you give slave for me, right? So that's very important aspect. So Indian Ocean slave trade, significant but less studied migration of African slaves to Middle East and Africa and India, right? So connected sugar plantation labor in regions like the Mascarenes Islands and European colonial powers like Portuguese, British, Dutch were active participants. So developed a unique cultural blend regions like the Indian Ocean Islands. So people are when we are ruled by the British people, the African slaves are taken into India to work in India in the sugar plantation, right? Tea plantations, right? So people were taken here, and people from here, as we have discussed in the earlier sessions, were taken to Africa, Malaysia, Singapore, and all those things for a lot of labor force because the European colonial powers need a lot of labor force to uh, uplift their economy. bring up their economy. So they were taking the slaves and they don't consider them as a human. And they were taking the various parts of the world wherever the British government is ruling. Okay, the abolition of slave trade. And this is because they're driven by religious, humanitarian, and political movements. Religious leaders like Catholic popes condemned slavery as immoral. So religious sentiments has taken place, and humanitarian sentiments grow in Europe and America, which is the main reasons. And nations began outlawing the trade in the early 19th century. So marked a shift toward addressing the legacies of slavery and oppression. So very, very important area that we need to look into, right? So how this abolition take place when the church involved into it, right? So religious and humanitarian political movements have taken place. So a lot of leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, right? So started fighting for the rights of their people, right? So don't treat us as second citizens. We are not slaves. Give the equal rights and religious perspectives like Catholic popes involved and enforced the governments, right? The ruling governments like colonial government to abolish this type of slave trade, right? So, so understanding the transatlantic slave trade involved forced migration of Africans, primarily West and Central Africa, to the Americas, US. So, fueled by European colonists' labor demands, that is a plantation in the Caribbean and the Americas, and millions displaced with significant cultural impacts on African descendant population today. So that we used to see a lot of Africans in US and other Canada and other countries because of this migration that took place during the colonial period. So integral elements looked into, there is a triangular trade, goods, slaves, and commodities circulated across continents, right? So goods, slaves, and commodities. So you this three triangular trade that took place, and there is a middle passage, there is harrowing journey of African slaves. So there is overcrowding, there is high level of mortality, right? There is no kind of welfare measures to take care of them. There is that is the definition of the middle passage, right? So that is the conditions. So when you look into the African diaspora spans millennia, encompassing diverse migratory phases. So the Atlantic slave trade remains its most impactful and studied aspect. And early movements like Bantu migrants and Indian Ocean slave trade also played a key role. Bantu migrants means it's very, very early period. And the modern African diaspora continues to contribute global culture and economic development. Now, the modern African diaspora means as like people are moving for education from African continent. For health reasons, they are going, and skilled labor or unskilled labor they are going. This is a modern African diaspora communities aspect. So we look into the Asian diaspora, that is uh, diaspora involves the dispersion of people from their homeland and the regions historically acknowledged by the Jewish diaspora. So predominant groups of South Asian diaspora is over 50 million individuals, primarily from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. Uh, Overseas Chinese diaspora, approximately 40 million people with notable communities in Southeast Asia, Americas, and Europe. So you see 2 days back, India opens visa for Chinese people after 5 years, right? That we need to look into. Just 2 days back, day before yesterday, I saw in the newspaper that it is open visa for Chinese people. We need to look into those aspects. We need to read newspapers to understand what is the diaspora community and reasons for migration and push and pull factors, political instability, poverty, lack of opportunities, which were prevailing in the countries of Asian countries, like including India, Pakistan, Malaysia, and all those things during that time. And full factors is economic opportunities, education, better living conditions. So South Asian diaspora is a historical migration spanning over 2,500 years. So major regions here is migrate yearly migrants in Southeast Asia, East Africa, and the Caribbean. So modern migration, Western countries like US, UK, Canada, and Australia. So these are the issues. So phases of migration when it's that as we discussed in the previous paper, is the indentured laborers. That means on contract they will go. During the colonial era, millions of Indians become indentured laborers. That means working in a plantation across the Caribbean, Mauritius, Fiji, and South Africa. A new diaspora after post 1960 migration driven by globalization, professional opportunities like skilled labor demands in Western countries. Right. So these are the world diaspora and new diaspora conditions of Asian countries, and contribution to South Asian diaspora. That is the economic, the significant remittances to home countries like India, boosting foreign exchange and community development. So there are a lot of, as we have discussed, around 56 billion, or we are getting as a remittance. We are sharing almost 40 percentage across the Asian globe, and cultural representation in medicine, technology, business, education in host countries. So these are the contribution of South Asian diaspora. And government engagement. Countries like India have developed diaspora diplomacy and incentive policies to strengthen ties with their diaspora communities. When you look into the our prime minister's visit to various countries, we look that closely that government engagement is high. He meets the diaspora community over there and brief, and sometimes he promises them or provide them new policies for promoting their contribution to the home countries and contribution to shaping global perception of their homelands, right? So the Asian diaspora, especially the South Asian group, is marked by its historic migration and modern globalization driven movements. So its dual contribution to both host and home countries underline its global significance, right? So very important that we need to study the Asian diaspora uh, uh, history, right? So the European diaspora, we know that it traces the historical evolution of the European diaspora, understand the socio-political economic factors influencing migration waves, and explore the contribution and current trends in the European diaspora. That's the main objectives of this chapter. And historical context, when you look into that, initiated during the colonial period, economic opportunities in new colonies, religious freedom of groups uh, like the Puritans, right? So here the colonial period, they when they expanded the colonial period, they need a lot of people to migrate, right? So dominated by the 19th century migrants due to economic hardships like Irish potato famine, racial persecution, and wars like World War One and Two, and third wave emerged the post-Cold War, driven by freedom movement within Europe, transition challenges Eastern Europe, conflicts like Balkans. So there are a lot of wars that is happening in the countries, European countries. So they started migrating to other places. So migration trends in 20th and 21st century is intra-European migration. That is, they move from within the countries, within their European countries, enhanced by EU policies to free movement and economic integration, and significant movement to the US, Canada, and Australia. So, diverse migrant categories like native Europeans without immigrant backgrounds, European nationals with immigrant roots like Algerians and France, non European nationals, and EU nationals relocating within the EU. Right? So, there are government bring lot of policies and to identify them who they are. Are they native Europeans? Are European nationals with immigrant roots? Right? Probably their foreparents are from other countries, but they are born in European countries. And non-European nationals, often from former colonies, and EU nationals relocating within the EU. Right? So, economic impact, significant remittance that boost bolster home economics, and investment and entrepreneurship supporting innovation and growth. Advocacy for homeland development has taken place. Efforts like EU 2030 Agenda and the Barcelona Declaration recognize the diaspora's role in sustainable development. So they are also looking into the SDG perspectives of this, And key to trends and modern insights is the migration is no longer only outward. Europe is now a hub of for both immigration and immigration. Crises like the Eurozone financial struggles continue to shape migration flows. And diaspora engagement in bringing the better policies, mutual benefits has been emerged in the European countries. And the European diaspora evolution underscores its profound impact on the global migration patterns and development. And when you look into this perspective, it's evident that diaspora community serves as a vital bridges between nations, fostering economic growth and innovation and cultural exchange. So, when we look into the various continent or various part of the world, from starting from Jews, uh, starting off after African countries and Asian countries and European countries, it differs on the cause of the uh, forming of diaspora, or people move from their countries. And if you look into all the countries now, the diaspora, the immigration is it's voluntarily in most of the countries. That the push factor is to go and better get a better job, better salary, better education, better health, or whatsoever. It is now infrastructure based movement that is taking place among the people. But in the initial stage, if you look into, it is because of war, or because of the poverty, unemployment, or less infrastructure like hospitals, schools, or education, so that the people moved. And now movement to various countries taking very logical way, and based on the policies of the uh, hosting countries, people are started moving. Whether I can, if I go there I get citizenship, whether I can go there if I get a better salary, or if I treat it like a normal citizens there, what is happening, and all those things they are looking into those perspectives before they move. But as the learners of diaspora, uh, doing masters in diaspora communities, migration and diaspora, we need to look into the cause of the history, especially the Jews communities, how they struggled and everything, and to look into how the colonial period has forced the people, all the colonial countries like India, to force the people as indentured labor to other countries, and make them to work and labor, get their labor, and all those things. How the human trade system has taken place, and the passage like where they were treated very uh, badly, right? So especially in the, when we look into the African diaspora, right? So the Atlantic slave trade and the passage system was very uh, uh, bad and going against the basic human rights, right? So middle passage system was being practiced, right? So how the government and the religious leaders have influenced to change that system, right? So these are the learning point that we had today. So thank you for joining. We will learn in the next tomorrow that on how this diaspora and triangular system, transnationalism, and how the government policies are there in different countries, to understand the better, uh, uh, to make the migrants to feel better situations in their own countries. So thank you.